Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. My name is Adam Portrais, and I'm joined as always by John Keenan.
Dear Heidi, I may have the first recorded incident of death by allergies, but I've had a good run. Go on without me.
In loving memory. And, of course, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and you take away my podcasts, and what am I? A scientist, author, father, and university professor. Oh, yeah, and I also have a sweet wizard suit.
Oh, you can't discount the wizard suit, man. That's the biggest. Honestly, that's the biggest get right there. It's just like, does he have a fancy wizard outfit?
The secret is it's all about the hat.
Yeah. So just all about the hat, less of the beard. Because everyone thinks it's the beard. You say hat.
Oh, yeah. It's the hat, man. The beard, you got it or you don't, but the hat you can buy.
I'd have to buy. Well, no.
Have you ever found yourself saying while you're wearing that, Bruce, Paladin needs food?
Yes.
Well, Wizard was one. Wizard needs food, so yeah, I could see that for you, man. I don't know if you know the music or not, ladies and gentlemen, or if you know how to read on your podcatching device there. We are going all the way back to 2012 and talking about the first Avengers movie, man. They said it couldn't be done. The long, hard road was paved with good intentions, and did those good intentions fly together? I'd say they did, because they made 87 billion movies afterwards, including, two other Avengers movies, and one of those that wasn't an Avengers movie but might as well have been. So I think we can pretty safely say that they've done a good job so far.
I would agree with those sentiments.
So
Change the game. This movie did change the game.
No kidding. We'll talk about a little bit of that game-changing action and stuff like that. We thank you guys so much for downloading the show, man. We continue to see downloads go up and up each and every month, and it's all because of you guys getting out there, telling friends, and making that stuff happen, man. And we know that you guys like shows like this one, where we kind of go back and really break down some of the big names out there. We love the small stuff too, but the big stuff, boy, do the big stuff get the numbers.
Yes, it does.
They're just like, oh, Avengers, I love Avengers. Here, talk good about Avengers. I don't know why the person that downloaded had that weird speech impediment, but we'll go with that.
Hey,
yeah, why are you making the listener dumb?
Yeah, it's more me. Let's be honest.
Isn't it strange that really popular movies make for really popular podcasts?
Who'd have thunk it? It's really stupid. But, yeah, we're going to be talking about Joss Whedon's Avengers from 2012 over here and all that kind of good stuff, and get into it, man. I think there's a lot to go back, and I had some revelations with this movie. Maybe not big ones, but enough ones that I think that we can definitely talk about. I got a
hot take myself.
Ooh, hot takes. The 10-year-old hot take. Almost 10. It's like 7.
Hey, I found out that the working title was Group Hug, and now I like it even better.
Yeah, that was true. Absolutely. I remember that. That's, man, in the internet age, everything seems like yesterday.
Group Hug.
But yeah, so we'll be talking about Avengers today, and of course, this is also going to launch us into, superhero season already, kids. Because we'll talk about what we're going to be doing at the end of the show, but man, oh man, does it not stop for HMP. If this is your first episode, man, you picked a good time to jump aboard, because we got a lot of
and
good
we
stuff
also
in the wings.
we missed a new release comic book movie this past weekend that I went to see with my kids.
Which one? What was that?
Well, there was a graphic novel called Tibetan Rock Dog that was made into a movie called Rock Dog, and somehow my kids drew me in to see it, and I saw it, and it's it's not bad.
I think we may have dodged a bullet, because I saw one commercial for that like a week before it came out, and I'm just like, what in the world is this? But that's based on a comic, huh?
Yeah, allegedly.
Allegedly.
Is your biggest problem with it, Bruce, is your biggest problem with the movie that there's not enough Tibet in it?
Kinda.
Could have used more monks.
The fact that they dropped Tibet from the name, it went from Tibetan Rock Dog to just Rock Dog, so that they would get a bigger audience in China where it was produced. That that kind of made me think of the ancient one.
I thought there was just going to be like at any point does a dog have a guitar?
Throughout the movie, that's the point of the movie.
Okay, I didn't I saw I literally saw 4 seconds of the end of a commercial, and I was just like, well, thank God I'm not going to have to go see that. And then it looks like at some point in the future we may have to watch it on this silly program.
Hey, there's a character called Fleetwood Yak, and I hate it that I didn't come up with that.
That's pretty great.
Daddy, why are you cursing under your breath so much? Well, they came up with a really good name here, and it wasn't me that did it.
Sam Elliott does the voice of Fleetwood Yak.
How does it stand up? Wow. How does it stand up against WrestleMania?
That's a tough one. It's always tough trying to compare animation to live action, but I'm going to give it a slight nod for Rock Dog.
You heard
it's
it
no
here,
Super
kids.
Buddies, but it'll do.
That's a poster quote
praise.
right there, man. No Super Buddies, but it'll do. It'll be fun. But yeah, now we haven't gotten one in a little while, but I do want to tell people we are one review away from 90 reviews on iTunes there. So, if you haven't done that, man, we'd really appreciate it. Go out in there. It kind of helps this podcast get out to everyone else. And, of course, the people that follow us and support us on Patreon, patreon.com/HMP. You guys are going to be getting some stuff pretty soon. I've been working my fingers to the bone over here, and I'll be talking about that at the end of the show. But a lot of good stuff coming you guys' way. But do want to thank everybody there, especially the super-duper executive producer of the month, Jim Beverly. He knows why. All right, so before we get into the show proper, before we get down to it, because I know everybody is on with bated breath over here going, talk about the Avengers. But first, we have to get to Audible.com. Man, Audible is the leading provider of audiobooks on the internet today. Can anyone name a number two?
I know the number two, but they buy their audio from Audible,
Yeah.
so it's sort of a rigged game. I mean, Audible is the provider of audiobooks.
Why
right now.
would you go anywhere else? I mean, it's just like, you don't go to a middleman to go get that stuff. You go straight to the source, man. You hook up to the nectar that is Audible. Now, myself, I had myself a download, and you know what I downloaded myself, kids? Dragon in the Needles.
Have you listened though? Downloading's only half the battle.
Listen, I'm producing 5 shows a week with Nerd Talk now.
Well, I do want to give a thanks to all the folks out there listening, because the audiobook has gotten quite a few downloads. People using those free credits, man. Use those free credits to download Dragon in the Needles. If you're not an Audible member, you go to audible.com, try now, and you get your free copy of Dragon in the Needles if that's what you want. So I want to tell everybody thanks for those who've done it so far, and thanks in advance to those of you who can't wait for this podcast to be over so you can rush to your computer to do that.
Pause it right now and go do it. We'll be here. It's okay. We'll be back whenever you're ready to come back. We'll be here, man. It'll be good to go. But yeah, audible.com/try now. I did listen to the first couple of minutes. I gotta get like my dog and go for a nice big walk and stuff. But it does good. You drug me in, Leslie. You drug me in with the thing. And I'll be honest with you. This is the dumbest thing in the world, but you know what impressed me more than anything? It is nothing that you did. They do it for all of them. But the second I start up the book and it goes, this is Audible, I was just like, oh, snap. This is real, son. This is real. Bruce got a real book for real, man. So audible.com/try now. 30-day free trial there. If you decide not to keep it, you still get to keep Bruce's book or any other book that you happen to get there. But I think you're going to like it so much that you'll keep on coming back. That's audible.com/try now. We thank Audible for their support of Hero Movie Podcast. Let's go ahead and get in it, gentlemen. Here is the trailer for Marvel's The Avengers.
You were made to be ruled. In the end, it'll be every man for himself.
What do we do?
We get ready. There was an idea to bring together a group of remarkable people. So when we needed them, they could fight the battles that we never could. Gentlemen, what are you prepared to do?
No offense, but I don't play well with others.
Big man in a suit of armor. Take that away. What are you?
Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist. If we can't protect the Earth, you can be damn sure we'll avenge it. Mr. Banner, your work is unparalleled, and I'm a huge fan of the way you lose control and turn into an enormous green rage monster.
Thanks.
All right, that was a trailer for The Avengers. Here's the IMDb plotline. Earth's mightiest heroes must come together and learn to fight as a team if they are to stop the mischievous Loki and his alien army from enslaving humanity. This is directed by Joss Whedon, starring, you know them all, Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Hemsworth, Tom Hiddleston, Clark Gregg. You got Samuel L. Jackson in there as well, and a whole boatload of other people. Man, oh man, it has been a while since 2012, but my guess is, as our boy Bruce Leslie has a great comic book connection for this one. What do you got for us, Bruce?
Well, in 1960, DC Comics launched a comic book series featuring a team of superheroes called the Justice League. Now, impressed by that book's strong sales, Martin Goodman, the owner at the time of Timely Comics, which would later come to be known as Marvel Comics, asked Stan Lee to create a title featuring a similar team of heroes for the soon-to-be-launched Marvel series of comics. Now, much like the Justice League, the Avengers were an assemblage of pre-existing superhero characters created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, and the original lineup featured Ant-Man, Wasp, Iron Man, Hulk, and Thor. And they united to take down Loki with a little help from Rick Jones. And if Rick Jones is your favorite character, you, sir, are a real gem. Now, when issue 4 hit, that was the pièce de résistance, as they like to say in French-speaking Canada. It was in this issue that a frozen, anachronistic hero named Captain America was added to the team. Now, in the Human Torch story titled Captain America in Marvel Comics Strange Tales number 114, cover date November 1963, which some people may be interested to know, I do have a copy of hanging on my wall. Well, in that issue, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby depicted the brash young Johnny Storm in an exhibition performance with Captain America, described as a legendary World War II and 1950 superhero who was returned after many years of retirement. Now, the story ends with this Captain America being revealed as an imposter. Turns out it was actually a villain named the Acrobat who, as the name would imply, was a former circus performer. And he broke 2 thieves out of jail and was trying to distract the police while they robbed a local bank. Now, because of the popularity of this issue, they decided to go in whole hog and really bring back Cap. So what happens is Johnny Storm digs out an old comic book that depicts Captain America. It shows him to be Steve Rogers. A caption in the final panel says that this story was a test to see if the readers would like him to return. And eventually what happened, the Avengers found Steve Rogers' body in the North Atlantic, frozen in a block of ice. And the block began to melt after Namor the Submariner became enraged that an Inuit tribe was worshiping a god other than him. So he threw it into the ocean, mainly because Namor's ego is just that fragile. Now, Steve Rogers eventually accepts membership in the Avengers and quickly assumes leadership because, much like James Brown, he ain't no side man. Now, in the 1970s, the Avengers stepped up their game and got involved in the Kree-Skrull War, territory previously reserved for the Fantastic Four. They also battled the Squadron Supreme, giving us a close approximation to the Avengers versus Justice League of America. And you may not know this, but in the 1970s, Harlan Ellison actually plotted the Avengers. And you know Harlan Ellison of the Flying Nun fame because, yes, he actually wrote scripts for the Flying Nun. And I say, hey, everybody's got bills to pay. And besides, this guy was as crazy as a soup sandwich. Now, speaking of crazy, Hank Pym had a mental breakdown, and Tony Stark battled a demon in a bottle, and the Avengers had some turnover in membership, and boy, did they get some real jewels. According to Comic Vine, there have been at least 222 members of the Avengers. This includes some real humdingers like a guy named 3D Man. There was also a flying horse. There was Captain Citrus, who I assume is high in vitamin C. Dr. Druid, because what better attribute can you look for in a doctor than the ability to talk to bears? Haywire was a guy that could shoot wires from his fingers, and I guess it could have been worse. He could have shot hay. Moira Brandon was an old lady with no discernible superpowers. Speedball got a stint on the team. So did Squirrel Girl. Stingray was even an early part of the team, and all Stingray is a guy in a scuba suit. And he was part of the team that had access to Namor. The team said, you know what we could use? A guy in a scuba suit. Give him a seat next to the God of Thunder and that indestructible android that can phase through walls. Yeah, scuba guy. He'll pick up their slack. That's right. Give him Two Gun Kid's old seat. I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you have any hacky talent and an unstable personality, you too could be a part of Earth's mightiest heroes.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
There's a chance.
That's all we need.
I always knew I was reading a bad Avengers when Jack of Hearts was in it.
Yep. The Jack of Hearts who temporarily killed the beloved Scott Lang.
We all can't be perfect. But so now back in 2012, man, we were treading on unknown grounds here at this point, man. We had ourselves an Iron Man movie, we had a Thor movie, we had a Captain America movie, and an Incredible Hulk movie. Captain America was the last one leading up into this, man, and we I think we all got what we were promised all the way back in the original Iron Man. Right?
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, Marvel Studios really had some ambition here, and the fact that they dared to pull this off is amazing to me. The whole development of it, started like 7 years, I guess, before this came out. It started before even the first Iron Man came out. They knew they wanted to make an Avengers movie, and they borrowed money from Merrill Lynch, which sounds more like the way that some tech industry gets its startup than the Avengers movie.
And it's
so.
Go ahead.
So let me ask this question to you guys: what is your number on this movie? How many times have you seen this movie?
You go first, Adam. I got to think about it.
I am too. At least 6, maybe more. I'd say the bare minimum number is 6, probably more than that.
I'd say my minimum number is 20, and there's a potential for it to be much higher than that.
When I watched this movie today, it was the 10th time I've seen it.
Oh.
Yeah, so I think that's a little bit of an endorsement. I think we're showing our hands a little bit here.
I hate watching this. Just I scream at it the entire time, and I'm just like, screw you, Joss Whedon. You ruined my childhood. It's like, what did that have to do with your childhood? Never you mind. So
I can't find my Crow City of Angels DVD. I guess I'll just have to throw in the Avengers again.
Hey, don't get the Crow people after us again. They already, anytime we bring up the Crow, that brings up the ire of it. Like most dudes in their 40s just go, these so-and-sos, how dare you besmirch the name of my Crow.
Yeah, they've smoked too many clove cigarettes. Good luck, gentlemen.
I'm sorry. The Crow is much better than Jai Courtney.
Well,
that's another group of angry fans.
Hey man, the people in Australia, for those of you that don't know, somebody from Australia did contact us, and it was just like, hey man, Jai Courtney's really good, you just need to shut your face about him. We're like, geez, dude. Like, it's half joking, but we did praise him a lot in Suicide Squad, but there is a contingent.
I love Captain Boomerang was great.
There's a contingent of Australia people that are just like, no bro, he's really good, trust me. Like, okay,
that's a good Australian accent. We all liked him in Suicide Squad. No one said anything bad. It was the first thing I'd seen him in ever, where I was like, hey, he's good in that.
The guy's really, really good. No, I wholeheartedly agree. But man, with this, like you said, Bruce, this thing had been kind of in development for quite some time. The question was who was going to direct it. And of course, a lot of people went back to the guy who launched off the Marvel Universe and said, hey man, Jon Favreau ought to be the guy that gets this, which would have been a fine enough choice. But when they said, hey, Joss Whedon looks like he's going to direct this. Well, Joss Whedon has quite the long history of not only nerdy stuff, writing for actual comic books as well as television and movies, right? But also has a great, great track record of balancing large casts. I think that was the big thing that made me go, this guy's probably a good helmer, because I think that he can juggle all those balls in the air at the same time and still have everybody doing something. Because the problem is when you get like 8 people on a team, all of a sudden, if you're not careful, a couple people are going to be left off to the corner, and a couple people are going to be just, taking the whole show. But this movie does, and Joss Whedon, I'll have to give him the biggest credit for this, really just kind of kept everything in flux as best as it possibly could. And I think he really is the arbiter for really getting that in there, and thus also bringing it on to the further films with the Russo brothers as well. I think he was a giant influence on that.
I think he deserves the lion's share of the credit for how well this movie turned out, I guess. And you hear some of the stories. You don't know if they're apocryphal or if they're true, but the story is, Zach Penn, the guy that wrote The Incredible Hulk, wrote the original script for this. And when Whedon got that script, he allegedly told Kevin Feige that the studio didn't have anything and they should pretend this draft never happened. And started, pretty much from scratch, though Penn still gets a credit as one of the writers.
Right. So essentially what that means, just to give you guys a little behind-the-scenes stuff, so when you're watching movies, you get this, right? So you'll see the, written by, right? And you'll have Zach Penn's name, and underneath that you'll have an and underneath that is Joss Whedon's name. So in that case, you got Zach Penn having the sole, being the original screenwriter, okay? And then the letters A-N-D, not an ampersand, but A-N-D, that also means that the next person who's underneath that then came along and rewrote the stuff. Now, they didn't rewrite it so much so that, the majority of it can be considered, quote-unquote, theirs. But, so that's why they have the and in there. It's like this guy came in and really, kind of run roughshod over all the other guys' material, really.
Yeah. I didn't know that there was a difference there between the ampersand and the A&D. So now I've got another nice piece of trivia in my repertoire.
If you have the ampersand, they did it together. But if you have A&D,
like Marcus
they did
and
it
McFeely have the ampersand.
Precisely.
It'd be great if they had the A&D, and the deal is Marcus was always writing scripts, and McFeely was constantly getting hired to fix them.
Those two guys hate each other.
They got opposite offices that are back to back, and their backs are against each wall, and every time the other one gets a script, bangs on the wall. What is this garbage you're feeding me?
And then I guess it's an even bigger rewrite when it goes to story by credit and then written by credit, right?
Yeah, so that just goes, he kind of thought about something. He had like a generalized thought, but nobody really wrote it down on paper to the degree that we could call it a script.
But I do know that the sort of tagline that Whedon added to it once he read the initial script was Avengers, some assembly required.
Well, that sounds about right. And that also sounds very Joss Whedon-y too. Just like, isn't that a little winky wink to the camera? And that's sometimes some of the stuff I find annoying about Joss Whedon. Oh, no, I said something negative about Joss Whedon. Don't come after me, Internet.
I'm a Whedonite. I like the guy really well.
I do too, but I don't have the hero praise that a lot of our nerd culture does. Everybody thinks he hung the moon and stars, and we'll get to it.
He hung the moon and stars, and Fox canceled them both after 11 episodes.
Oh, it's funny because it hurts, doesn't it, kids?
Now, the cast, you mentioned the cast here, too, and I think that's another massive coup. We were talking about this movie being a game changer, but for any kind of franchise movie, and in particular comic book franchise movies, I mean, Warner Brothers couldn't even keep the same Batman for 4 movies in a row, and they brought most of their principal players back for this. And the one change they made, I really liked. I know this might get me some hate mail, but I really prefer Mark Ruffalo to Ed Norton as Bruce Banner.
Oh, me too.
I don't, but I don't mind him. I'll say that. I don't mind him in the role at all. If they had to make a change, I'm pleased with what became of that. I'm just always going to be a bigger Edward Norton fan, but that's just from just a plain acting standpoint. But that's just me. But I like what it's tough to see this role if Edward Norton was playing it. I'll say that because I think it would be very, very different too. So.
And I also, I mean, there was a lot of back and forth. It was initially kind of ugly, and then it got pleasant before the movie finally made it to theaters. But there was a little bit between the studio and Ed Norton going back and forth. And I came away with the idea, and I don't know the guy. I've never, I have no way to know where this impression came from. But I get the idea that an Ed Norton project is an Ed Norton project. You know what I mean? Like he's not necessarily a cog in the machine.
Well, the big thing is that he wanted, and I'll talk about this because Joss had some talks with him, so I know a little bit of the history here. So Edward Norton, at the end of the day, now this is all from what I hear from most sources that I've read, really just wants the best project to be done, and so and if it happens to be he's a bit of a jerk that way, so be it. He rewrote a bit of the Incredible Hulk to have better character moments in it and things of that nature. As far as Joss Whedon knew, he went to Edward Norton, showed him the script and everything. Everybody was copacetic, man. It was going to happen, and it turned around. So his being off the project and everything blindsided Whedon just as much as it did anyone else. So it's interesting how all that kind of went down. But I think that was ultimately the studio just going, hey, he gave us a little bit of problem over here. Let's make sure that we can nip that in the bud and find somebody that'll play along. Because as we've said for a lot of these Marvel movies and everything, is that they really want people that are going to kind of play ball. Because unlike a lot of DC stuff, I think this is very much done by a proper committee, if you will. So it runs through all the right channels and stuff, and they want everybody that's going to play ball, and all the pieces of this giant Marvel Universe puzzle will fit together properly. And if they don't, that's going to upset the apple cart, and they don't want to do that.
And I think maybe, just maybe, this is pre-Disney. This was just throwing a dart in the dark, if you will, when they made the original Iron Man. And Robert Downey Jr. was, coming off a little bit of a personal skid there, and they cast him. It seemed like a safe decision, but then he soon grew to be such a big part that they didn't want to take the chance, I guess, of having other people that could almost make the same sort of demands that Robert Downey Jr. could at this point, too.
You're probably not wrong there. And
I kind of suspect that's why Whedon got the rug pulled out from under him sort of halfway through Age of Ultron, but that's the conspiracy theorist in me.
No, but I don't think you're incorrect in that in that assumption.
And I even think that Favreau during Iron Man 2 was given a little bit of a you better know who your daddy is talk, and that's why he didn't have any directorial input after Iron Man 2. He just stuck around and was a producer and a performer, but gave up the reins.
But really, when you look at the whole of everything, we'll get back to the movie specifically, but I like this generalized talk of the universe too, because I think this movie is really where kind of the culmination of everything that they were doing came from, and really just kind of set the precedent for what would rest become and where everyone else would also be trying to get to at any particular point. But I think one of the reason, the time for me that really came about was with Ant-Man. With Ant-Man being able to be as good a movie as it was. Because that had everything set up to fail. We had a director that everybody loved, got kicked off of it, and we're like, oh crud, man, what's going to happen over here? Is this well-oiled machine? They've made a lot of great decisions so far. Is this a decision that needed to be made, or is this really going to turn everything upside down? And it turned out gangbusters, man. So at this point, in the cycle, you do question a lot of things that they're doing, but at this point, I give them kind of the reins that I gave Raimi back in the day with Spider-Man. I was just like, look, until he screws this up, let him do whatever the heck he wants,
Yeah, I get you, man. I get you. A couple more things on casting, I guess. Emily Blunt was the first choice for Black Widow, and I just can't picture anybody but Scarlett Johansson now. And I don't know a ton of Emily Blunt's work. How do you guys feel it would have turned out with an Emily Blunt Black Widow?
Let me take it from here. First of all, how dare you, Bruce? Emily Blunt is amazing.
I like
Emily Blunt would have actually been better in that role. Emily Blunt is she's in two amazing movies that if you haven't seen them, stop the podcast, go watch them immediately. One is The Day After Tomorrow. No, not The Day After Tomorrow. What is the movie with Tom Cruise that's Die Repeat?
Live Die Repeat.
That's what it's technically. Yeah, Edge of Tomorrow, Live Die Repeat.
Tomorrow.
There's 15 different
movie.
names.
I agree.
She's the main female in that, and then she's also in Looper, another awesome sci-fi movie.
Mm-hmm.
Totally worth seeing just for Jogo's makeup.
I love that actress. I think she's incredible. She would be an amazing Black Widow.
Amazing Scarlett Johansson. I like that idea. Emily Blunt as Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow.
It's
so
Inception.
They offered her the role and she said no?
I think she was signed to the role, and then something came up. I never get the whole story here. Some kind of conflict or something.
Well, think about it this way. Think about it this way too, though. She may have just saw it as it was initially, which was a tiny little role in Iron Man 2.
Well, yeah, I'm sure. It was a multi-picture deal, but yeah, I'm sure that's what she looked at.
But again, at that point, you're just like, what's really going to happen with this for reals? But no, I do like Emily Blunt a whole lot. I will say this though, I want her to prove me wrong because I do like her as an actress a whole bunch. But I think from a physical standpoint, just like it feels like Scarlett Johansson could probably handle herself a little bit more. That's just me.
No, you have no idea what you're talking about.
Maybe I don't.
You literally right now the movie that.
Hey, I thought
Emily
Blunt sang that.
Year is Lego Batman.
I thought Emily Blunt was the person who sang that annoying song "Beautiful" that used to be on the radio. So I was way off.
Her voice is weird.
She does have a voice like an angel, though.
Oh, okay, good. Maybe she could be Della Reese's role in the reboot of Touched by an Angel.
Or maybe she's the new Dazzler.
Oh, I like that. Is she? Is she?
I have no idea.
Oh, because somebody was sort of quasi-cast as Dazzler, but I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was Taylor Swift. I don't know.
No, they.
How did you just say that word?
Dazzler.
I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it.
People that are fans of Dazzler and people that are fans of Dazzler.
I'm more of a fan of Dazzler.
Yeah.
Lest anybody call up and just write another email, and just go like Bruce is. I just was like, I'm gonna let that one lie.
Dazzler.
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 I think we might have a new T-shirt. Dazzler, a couple A's in there. You tell me how that's spelled. We'll make that shirt, Bruce.
And there was a moment when I was watching this movie, and I was so glad it was made at the time it was, and with the sort of style and technique and the build-up and the casting, because I just saw Captain America. I saw Chris Evans, walking through some dark room and picking up his gear. And for a moment, I just thought if they had made this like in the late 80s, early 90s, Kevin Costner would have been Captain America, and this would have been awful. Like I started having this like I broke out in sweats thinking of how awfully this would have been cast anywhere between like 88 and 92.
It would have been the worst.
You know how Wizard used to do that? How Wizard used to do that thing where they would do stunt casting?
Casting call,
yeah.
We should do a bit for worst casting ideas for.
I've already done it for this movie, man, because I started thinking about all the people that have been rumored, and then I looked at some in-movie references, and I came up. Tom Cruise would have been Iron Man.
Well, he was scheduled to be Iron Man at one point way back in the day, so not impossible.
Something's telling me Kevin Costner and $1 million worth of CGI hair would have been Cap. And then there's the point where Tony Stark refers to Thor as Point Break, and I just had an epiphany that Patrick Swayze would have been a great Thor back in the day. He could have done some hip swiveling dancing while he swung that hammer around. Rick Moranis as Bruce Banner and Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Hulk.
Dustin Hoffman as Hawkeye. I'm just saying.
Meg Ryan would have been cast as Black Widow, and I would have hated it. And then, you got to have the right villain, so Judge Reinhold as Loki.
And Rerun from What's Happening as Nick Fury.
No, that would have been the Hoff. You got to stick with the Hoff.
I still like Rerun in there. That's just me. I'm a Rerun fan.
I like all
Rerun
of this.
could have been
like
Coulson.
Rerun is Coulson. Yes. With the beret and everything.
Gary Coleman, that would have been good too. You can never have too much Gary Coleman. What you talking about?
Will you sign my cards, please? They're vintage.
Yes, perfect.
With Gary Coleman as MODOK. It's gonna happen. It might happen with Dinklage. I mean, people are already talking about that, right?
Oh man, I want him to be Puck.
I think that's probably where it's more likely to go, if we're honest.
Though he's already been in universe, so who knows?
Well, no, that's their universe. That's the Fox universe. But
Puck. I don't know where Alpha Flight falls on this whole right still.
I weirdly know this answer. Alpha Flight is with X-Men.
Yeah, that's what I would have figured.
So, but it's only the Canadian rights, so Fox could only release it in Canada.
No one else knows about this movie.
Exchange rate on those rights. You're going to have a lot more rights in America. So.
Oh man, and they could film it at the same studio where they did that Power Pack thing.
Coming after you, Canada. So yeah,
this is a movie that I feel like everybody's seen and everybody has their opinion about it. So I think I'm enjoying the behind the scenes and what if kind of game more than actually breaking down the movie. But I feel like I'm walking all over you guys.
No, that's fine.
Well, let me ask you this question, because how bad do you guys think this movie screwed up the DC universe?
Oh my gosh, honestly, I sat back and watched this and just go, I mean, like, I love the movie, but I go, this movie is now what is wrong with comic book movies, in the best of ways and in the worst of ways, right?
Well, I mean, the the movie that was most obviously impacted by Marvel's plan was Green Lantern, but that's before this movie came out. But it's impacted because they were trying to do the same thing and trying too hard, and they haven't really regained from it. But I'm also a believer in what I eat won't make you fat. So what Warner Brothers has done wrong is on them, not, if they allow themselves to be shaken by this, that's not, I don't want to give this movie the credit.
Well, you're right. It's all on them, but at the same time, it's covetous, man. That's all what it is. As they sit back and just go like, look at them just knocking it out of the park every time, and they don't want to be known as the also-rans, right?
Well, then they should follow the great American tradition of just ponying up a whole bunch of money and buying off all the Marvel people. I mean, just like the comics do. If DC has a great writer, Marvel would hire him away for 10 years and vice versa. Mm-hmm. Why don't they just do that on the movie side? Pony up and get Kevin Feige for like 4 movies. Then Disney's going to pony up even more and get him back. It's the American way. We stole all the best physicists in the world when we needed them. Why not directors and producers?
That's true.
Have Robert Downey Jr. play Batman.
Ooh.
He would be great.
He would do it,
It'd be a different interpretation, but it'd be a lot like Will Arnett's, I feel.
But here's the thing. At the same time, like all these people, they see all that happen, and they want to do that, but I think not since the days of old school studio system and everything, people are just blood loyal to their company, man. Because I just don't think there's, I forget who was, but there's a couple of people that have been asked about, like, hey, what do you think about the DC stuff? And I think Sam Jackson straight up just goes, yeah, they're all garbage. What we do is amazing. So, I mean, I think it creates a loyalty in these people that just kind of goes, hey, this is what we're going to do. And I think of all those people, Robert Downey Jr. is probably one of the biggest, because this is the role that got him back to where he is right now. And it's absolutely unbelievable. Follow him on his Facebook page, kids. I don't think this guy wants to stop being Tony Stark anytime soon. I think he loves this role more than life itself.
And I'm going to go ahead and say this, and at this point, the mechanism has been built so that the Empire can continue without him, potentially. But you don't have that charismatic guy as Iron Man in movie 1. I don't think we have what we have today for Marvel. Or Disney not. Marvel movies.
But you see him. But you see him in that like Infinity War little promo that they put out there, and he doesn't look like a guy who's reluctantly on set.
He doesn't look like a guy who's reluctantly on set in the trailer for Spider-Man: Homecoming. I mean, the guy loves what he's doing.
I think he digs everything that he's doing, and like, it's weird because it's like, in a sense, also because the characters, in a way, from a personality standpoint, is a lot like Robert Downey Jr., but that's also kind of become his own personality to, dialing that to 11. He's almost become Tony Stark himself. So it's a real weird, symbiotic relationship going on.
He also doesn't look like a guy that's been in jail for a year.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm just kind of giving you my gestalt of the situation. I don't have hard numbers, but I feel like he came to Iron Man when he only had like maybe his last $1 million in the bank and needed the paycheck, and now he's like the richest guy in Hollywood as far as actors are concerned. So This is really it's like he has had 2 lives, the before Iron Man life and the after Iron Man life.
No, absolutely.
And I'm going to guess he likes the after better.
Well, he is. When he was on Leno back in the day, he asked him, he was just like, hey, man, so which do you like better? Doing like a movie where you get all the Academy Awards and stuff like that, all those nominations and everything, or a big giant blockbuster like this? He like paused for like half a second and goes, oh, the blockbuster. What, are you kidding me? This is great.
Yeah.
It's like
and the guy's great. I mean, he has kept up his end of the bargain. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Or at least hiding it very well.
Yeah, if he hates what he's doing now, he needs an Oscar for these movies.
I was going to say,
seems to be loving
hiding it very well is kind of goes along with the job when you're a performer, right?
Yeah, but at the same time too, I don't think he would have so much public persona stuff going on where it seems like he's just digging it. I mean, when the guy goes and shares Iron Man memes, he likes what he does.
Yeah. The guy makes it a point to get photographed in a comic shop at least once a year, too. I mean, it's the sort of thing you have to set out to do.
Yeah, they're not playing around.
When's the last time Christian Bale got photographed at Midtown Comics?
Oh, no, never. Christian Bale wouldn't set foot inside of that place.
But back to your original question, how much did this damage Warner Brothers DC properties? I'm going to say that it only damaged it as much as they let it, because they actually had finally hit on something really good and special in their own right. I'd put The Dark Knight up against any superhero movie ever made. And then they saw this and really changed their direction, and then changed their direction again, and then changed their direction again, when I think they should have just let some good movie makers make the movies they wanted to make, and not try so hard to be worried about what kind of car the neighbors are driving.
But that's the thing. I think it all comes from that, and I think fear stems from that quite a bit. And I think that's why they're in the situation that they're in right now. Is they are scared to look bad. They are scared to drop the ball. That's why Zack Snyder is continuing to go back to this. That's why Ben Affleck is scared to direct the Batman movie, because he just doesn't want to have to bear that responsibility.
And I say, if Warner Brothers were smart, they would look internally. Instead of worrying about what Disney's doing with Marvel, look inside and see what was it that worked about the Dark Knight trilogy that Nolan did. What worked well about the Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, not so much The Hobbit. What worked well about Harry Potter. I mean, they have their own movies that have just taken in all the money available for a month at a time. So don't worry about, that this summer belonged to Disney. Let's go ahead and just do what we do. But they can't ever seem to do that. I think there's a company issue there.
But you're right.
Yeah, it seems to me that there's a lot of smart people doing a lot of stupid things around there, for sure.
And I also feel like it's the opposite in terms of casting, too, because Marvel, like I said, I suspect that they didn't want the name to be bigger than the role. A lot of times, a lot of folks, who the heck, I'd never heard of Chris Hemsworth before he was Thor.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Evans was a smallish actor in terms of the roles he'd had. I mean, he was known, but he wasn't what I would call a draw. But then at the other end of things, they're saying, okay, we're going to cast this. Who are the names of people that were really popular 15 years ago? Okay, we got to get Will Smith no matter what we have to change to get it. We better get Ben Affleck, no matter what they're after the name and not really looking to suit the character.
I would agree to that up until Affleck, because I think
Affleck's great, but I don't think that they cast him because he was great. I honestly think it was sort of the biggest. I mean, they wanted. This is not something I'm making up as a joke. Their top line for Amanda Waller was Oprah Winfrey. That is not what the studio should be doing to cast that role.
Yeah. Not wrong. Can't fight that. But yeah,
I mean, unfortunately, Monique has been blacklisted, so they wouldn't hire her. But she would have been probably better than Oprah in that role.
Hey, man, that's what happens when you win that Oscar, man. Sometimes you go down the tubes real fast. It happens to a ton of people, man.
Just get Medea to play Waller.
I'd buy tickets to that.
Oh Lord, you gonna get up in here, Mr. Batman?
Medea's Suicide Squad.
Medea does the Justice League.
Oh,
that's a totally different movie there. Sean.
Listen, but here's the thing. You'd go to see that, wouldn't you? Boy, I would.
Oh, yeah. You better believe it.
They got my money lock, stock, and barrel right there, man. I don't even care. I'll just yes, please, sign me up.
Man, let's talk just simply about the movie, because let's point out some things we liked or don't like. There are going to be people annoyed that we haven't really broken down any of it. I don't think we need to hit it beat by beat, but watching it again recently here for this podcast, what were some of the things maybe you forgot how much you liked, or things that you thought you liked better than you did? You guys have any ideas?
I can tell you the main one for me, the thing that really popped out to me is just how well written Black Widow is in this first Avengers movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Of course, she would have been written better with Emily Blunt, but you got what you got.
Well, exactly. Emily Blunt's a far better, far superior actress. Anyway, the character is so well written and so realized, and she went into this movie with nothing. I don't know about you guys, but I thought that she was going to be the weak point, not because she's a lady, but because she had nothing to do in Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
And so going into this movie, I was like, that's probably going to be pretty weak, but at least Scarlett Johansson's really pretty and we get to look at her.
Right.
And I kind of thought she was going to be the member who betrayed the team or double-crossed the team. You know what I mean? That's kind of what you are set up to expect just from the character, the nature of the character.
Right, and it kind of makes sense that would be what that. And the funny part is how throughout all the movies, she's one of the most loyal people in the entire group.
But I know her interrogation scene in Russia. The first time I saw this movie, that was a real highlight of the movie, and it still holds up after at least 20 viewings.
And you're right, that holds up well, and then it also, but the great thing, that Whedon does is that he goes through and everything is just a setup to something else, because that's a setup obviously to the later scene with Loki and everything, And while not an obvious one, it is just like, hey, I'm doing what I'm doing in order to, accomplish a goal here, even though I'm going to look like I'm losing most of the time. I think that's an important thing, and it's great that we planted that earlier and then just, an hour and 20 later, pick it right back up.
Well, I think the scene... Go ahead. I'm sorry, Sean.
I was going to say it's one of the things that Whedon does best, where the three characters that you should care the least about because they've just been so poorly handled in this franchise, he completely flips around to where they're the best parts of the movie, and it's Black Widow, Phil Coulson, and Hulk. Mm-hmm. Those three characters were weak before we went into Avengers, and now they are beloved.
Well, I want to talk about Coulson here because for a long time I thought that Whedon was just being too much of a prima donna in his complaints, I guess, about how Coulson was dealt with post-Avengers. But this watching it, I really realized that everything Whedon tried to do with Coulson was just undermined by the things that have followed it. How do you guys feel about that?
Because I totally agree with you.
Had zero impact. I totally devalued the character because of what's happened since, and it really took a very Whedon-esque aspect of this movie away from him after the fact.
You're right, but I want to piggyback on that. Is that was such a Whedon-esque move that it almost seemed a little too on the nose, and I think that's what probably more that their reaction to was like, it's a bit much. I mean, I get why they did it, and I kind of understand why they did what they did post that, but at the same time, I don't know. I'm of two minds about it. I thought it was quite the cojones to actually go and kill him off and everything. But
yeah, especially a movie-only creation. When they bring back Bucky, as the Winter Soldier, I can't complain too much because it's already happened. Mm. But the way that they dealt with Coulson, it just undermines this moment in the movie. And also the medical professional in me does think he went from not looking that bad off to completely dead awfully quick, like mid-sentence.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you this, I have hit my pinky toe on the door frame on more than one occasion and been in far more visible pain than Coulson was after being speared by Loki's staff.
He was stunned, man. You can't. Come on. He was stunned into like, oh, it just happened. I don't know. And then that's...
Well, I'll tell you what, I would not have been giving any words of wisdom to Nick Fury after I stumped my little toe, because that hurt like a you-know-what.
And you know what? I don't even like you anymore. I'm fine. What? Shut up.
Bald-headed, one-eyed jerk.
Yeah. No, but now I'll say one of the things that I was interested by this time going through is that the action up front throughout the first, honestly about 3/4 of the movie is not very good. The action is shot very, very shabbily.
That was a question I had for you guys is, this movie received mostly praise. It was mostly well received, but because of its length, some people did complain about the pacing. But when you break it down, what's supposed to happen in the middle of a movie happened in the middle. It just seemed like it took longer to get there because the movie had a ridiculously long third act that I wouldn't give up a second of. Rewatching, I don't have any trouble with the pacing. I don't have that much trouble with the action early on, but a lot of that is because I know what's on the way.
Well, the problem is that I don't is not pacing. It's just the action itself. I think the action shot throughout with save for the last final set piece and everything is very lackluster. Is very bland, and I thought, okay, and like my thought while we rewatching here was like, maybe that's Joss's big problem was it's just like, maybe he's just not as good as directing action as we all kind of thought he might actually be. But that being said, when you get to the final piece, it's like, oh no, what happened is clearly they spent all their time and effort, putting together this last big piece, which I remember being a lot more disjointed and not so good. But this time going through and really watching it and being able to just kind of like purposely dissecting it for the course of this review and everything, It's done really well. It's the best directed part in this thing. And again, it's that Whedon keeping all the balls in the air at the same time and knowing where each of them is at the specific time. There's a great shot that kind of goes through and like you visit each member of the team in a one giant wide shot and everything that just kind of tracks along and follows everybody. That is spectacularly well done. And, if you went and see it in 3D, it looks fantastic in 3D. It's just like when it comes down to that bit, he really knows what he's doing.
Where do you come down on this, Sean?
I think that the movie is too long. I still do. and just from the perspective of, let's say you are trying, and I used to harp on this a lot more than I do now, but just from the perspective of someone who's trying to get a loved one into the things that they're into, like like superhero movies. This is not going to be the first movie you take them to. This is going to be, hopefully the fifth movie that you take them to. But the trying to indoctrinate someone into your culture, a 2.5 hour long movie is not the way to do it. And so, and even with people who are just casual fans, 2.5 hours is a very, very long time to sit through a movie. Now, for us, we love this movie, and we should. This is the best of what they can do. However, if I am like my mom is going to be bored to tears at the second hour of this movie.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter the pacing. It doesn't matter how well it's shot. It's 2 hours. It's literally the length of the movie. And that's why I feel like 2.5 hours is a very long time for this movie.
True, but
and
this
if
is
they're
a
going to
reward.
trim it, I mean, if they are going to trim it. And it's interesting, even just from 2012 to 2017, seeing the way they approach these movies differently, because they still approach this like somebody's going to come in and watch this and not have seen any of the previous movies. They do a lot of exposition and explaining that's already been done, whereas in 2017 they'll have a third string character from a movie like Doctor Strange or Ant-Man just show up with no explanation and understand that we either know who he is or we don't need to know that badly. But here, even that they had like a preamble and a prologue, then the movie started, and that whole preamble about the Tesseract could easily have just been cut. If that movie was being made now with the success they've had, I don't think they feel they need to go a little bit out of their way to show us a bit of Captain America's backstory like they did here. Mm-hmm. So I do think if they shortened it, it would be the front end and not the back end.
I agree.
Yeah, that's probably very on point. One of the things I do want to complain about this movie, because there's so much that I love, but I do have a couple nits to pick. This is the weakest costuming that we've seen. And I'm really going to harp on the hardest, going to be Captain America. Captain America's costume is awful.
I'm arm in arm with you. I'm so glad when Winter Soldier came, they dialed back his costume a little bit.
Well, I don't even mind the colors. I mean, the colors are fine with me. I mean, we've seen him do it in 2 other Captain America movies where we've had some pretty decent colors. Loudness of colors, I don't care. I think it's the quality of the material that's there. It looks like crappy spandex covering some like the old pads and stuff that they had back in the day for like Keaton to wear in Batman.
The worst is the cowl. The worst is the cowl that took the place of his helmet. That rubbery thing over his face is far and away the weakest part of any of the costuming in this movie. I don't have a problem with Thor's costuming. The Iron Man armor looks great the way it was rendered. The Hulk, the way he's rendered in this movie, is still my favorite rendering of the Hulk ever, and it blew my mind when I saw it. And Loki is just perfect in his armor. I
do wish we had a little more Loki, not necessarily in this movie, but in subsequent movies. Hopefully we'll get it with Ragnarok, in the big proper, Loki helmet and everything.
With the horns on it.
Yeah, I like that. And I wish we had more of that kind of stuff in there. But yeah, I mean, Captain America's the big one. Thor is okay. It could be a little bit better. I think the surrounding movies, he looks better in those. But yeah, it's just... It's kind of weak sauce there, but man, it kills me because every other Captain America costume in every other movie looks boss. This just looks bad, and I'm just like, it just throws me out of the movie. I don't know
how it happened. There's even an in-movie explanation though, because they let Coulson help design it.
Yeah, I wish I could buy that as much as they maybe want to sell it. I'm just like, oh, okay, is that why it looks like crap? I think you could come up with a better looking costume maybe, because he's going to be wearing it 3/4 of the bloody movie. But
what do you guys think about the Chitauri?
I like the Chitauri more this time than I remember initially liking it, because that was one of the big things that was just like, to me, it was a very kind of nameless, faceless, and they're still kind of that. And the end of this movie initially did remind me more of a Transformers movie. But I don't know, maybe I've seen it enough times, or it's kind of gone through my system and stuff, but it didn't scream that to me this time for some reason. I don't know why. I liked it more this time.
I mean, they're obviously orcs. They're the Marvel Universe equivalent of orcs, but that works really well because you get to see the superheroes actually being superheroes. You get to see them actually pounding on people, and it's just because of the sheer number of enemies they face, and volume is their enemy, not the individuals, which is more fun to me than the more classic. The villain beats up the hero for 85 minutes. Then in the last 15 minutes, the hero beats the villain,
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. They're still nameless and faceless, but it's with purpose. And
they had Loki. They had Loki as the face to put to it, but Loki never really has that much of an upper hand. And that's kind of an interesting take for a movie like this. And I like that. I think that's why I like Loki better than most of their villains.
Agreed. And also I have to mention this. The best line in any superhero movie ever is in this movie also, and I completely forgot about it till just now, which is Banner turns around to them and he says, "You still haven't figured out my secret? I'm always angry." And he turns around and turns into the Hulk and saves the day, and it is the best line in superhero movies to me. It's not even close. It's my favorite thing.
I'll tell you, I have never forgotten that line. My personal favorite scenario, I guess you could call it scene in this movie, is when Loki starts to make his monologue to Hulk, and like 7 words into it, Hulk just grabs him and smashes him back and forth about 15 times and then says, "Puny God." That's my favorite. I've seen a GIF of Hulk just smashing Loki, and I've actually stared at it probably for an hour nonstop and giggled. So there's something I love about that anytime it's like when people watch people complaining about other movie properties, say Batman v Superman, and they say if that fight really happened, Superman would just grab Batman and smash him around 50 times, but the movie can't do that because it's not interesting. Well, guess what? Joss Whedon did it, and it was super interesting to me. I loved it.
And no one questioned anything. It was just like, and it was the perfect scenario. It's like, oh, you've got this god, and you've got the Hulk. He smashes him around, and he's still breathing on the ground at the end of the thing. And never once do you just go like, oh, well, that's just out of like, no, it's kind of perfect.
Well, his reaction after getting pounded is so great.
Oh God,
he's like wheezing. It's so good.
I love it, man. I love it. And of course. Robert Downey Jr. is going to chew up every scene he's in and steal it. But the Hulk, for me, was my favorite part of the movie. And Ruffalo. I liked Ruffalo a lot, too.
Me too.
But part of that's because I had not been happy with any way the Hulk had ever been dealt with before. And when I saw this movie, I was worried that he wouldn't be dealt with here. And finally, I had a Hulk movie that I could just 100% be behind.
There was a lot of great joy behind it and stuff, and there was tiny little Easter eggs that they kind of put everywhere. I mean, there's a point where he says, I tried to kill him. I put a bullet in my mouth, and the big guy ate it. Essentially
spit it back out.
Yeah. So but that's a scene in the deleted scenes in the Incredible Hulk and stuff. So it's nice little kind of nods like that they'll kind of sprinkle in there just for fans and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And then, of course, the great moment where Hulk and Thor finally land safely inside a skyscraper, and then just without warning and without any reaction shot, Hulk fist pounds Thor in the head, and then next scene. I love that.
Yeah, and there were a lot of laughs to be had in this. And, just from, I bet you $5, like, oh, there's nothing that I could see that would surprise me. I'll bet you $5, and him just handed him $5 on the head. That was the big thing for me, man. That was something I remember when watching this the first time, is they're on the, the deck of the carrier and everything. And they were like, nope, this is not a submersible. And then I was just like, oh, my, they did it. They actually did it.
So 5 years ago, Adam, how many times did you make a joke? Man, that was one hell of a carrier.
I'm not as corny as you, Bruce, but maybe once. What am I, George Burns?
He was a legend, I tell you. Oh God, You Devil 2 was a great one.
But I had a lot of fun, and I gotta say, as much as I was kind of going, man, I don't know that this is gonna hold up as well as it probably should have. It did a decent job. Now, before we get to rating this bad boy and everything, we gotta ask.
Let me give you one more little nitpick.
How
Adam.
dare you?
I'm sorry to derail you here.
No.
Sorry to derail you. Do you have any thoughts on the 1.85 to 1 aspect ratio?
Yeah, it's bad. Done.
I knew I would get you on that one.
No, trust me.
It was filmed in 1.85 to 1.
Trust me, like at the beginning of the movie, it did like even watching it this time, I was just like, that's a darn inconsistency that I don't like. But okay, whatever, man. I mean, what's done is done. But no, I don't like it. Anything else?
I just had to get that. You're the only guy I know that talks a whole lot about aspect ratio.
It bugs me, man.
What you had to say.
If it ain't right, I don't like it. I get upset.
I had a conversation about aspect ratio today where I just nodded my head and smiled like I knew what they were talking about.
I'm over here. I'm the guy who buys the Criterion version of On the Waterfront because it has the 3 different versions in it that like people fight over which one is correct.
And then just the last little tidbit, shawarma sales did go up after this movie was released.
Indeed they did. And people across the pond there, when they got this movie before us, poor saps over there didn't get that saying, boom, USA, USA, USA.
Serves them right for making us change the name over there.
Yeah, no kidding.
Eat it, Merrick.
All right, now we can officially get down to the most important part of this thing, and that's not our rating. You guys pretty much figure out what this is. We got to find out how this bad boy connects to our good old friend Sylvester Stallone.
Thanks, Adam. I have a prepared statement. There's a lot of things I don't know. I don't know why the TV show Two Broke Girls is so popular.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about Swarovski crystals. I definitely didn't know that the same guy who wrote Inspector Gadget also was a co-writer on the Avengers. How could that possibly be the same guy? Now, as a nerdy nerd, I'd heard the name Zach Penn because he wrote X-Men 2 and The Incredible Hulk. But he also wrote Elektra and X-Men 3 and the vastly overrated 90s comedy PCU. Zach Penn started his career when he wrote and sold his first script at age 23. That script was called The Last Action Hero. Mm-hmm. And if you like that movie, you're wrong, because that movie is awful and you have bad taste. Zach Penn is also a director and producer, but his greatest accomplishment came in 1998 when he worked as a story consultant on Ants, a movie which has only come up once before on this show during episode 42, which was our episode on The Incredibles, which is a way better animated movie. Bruce taught all of us so many things I didn't even know about The Incredibles and about Pixar. And if you haven't listened to that episode yet, you totally should, just for Bruce's insight alone. Adam, you said some pretty important things too, but I just can't recall anything you said. But to get back to it, Zach Penn did some work on Ants, which stars the voice talent of Woody Allen and Ferrari enthusiast Sylvester Stallone. Something not everyone knows is that Woody Allen and Stallone have worked together before in another movie, Bananas, in 1971. That makes these two men very, very old. And there you have it, HMPers, this week's Stallone connection. Now, Harry Dean Stanton and Ashley Johnson, let's review this movie so we can all get ready to be disappointed by Logan next week.
Yeah, indeed.
Hey now.
All right, so here on Here Movie Podcast, we don't have letters, we don't have grades or stars or any of that nonsense. We have our own nonsense. It's called the patented Robin rating system. If you'd like to check out what that looks like, head on down to facebook.com/Hero Movie Podcast and look at it there, man. It's at the top. And hey, while you're there, throw us a like. We're almost up to 2,000 likes over there, so we really appreciate that.
Hello.
Bruce, where does The Avengers fall on the HMP Robin rating system for you, sir?
This is not my favorite superhero movie of all time, but it is my favorite Marvel movie ever. There's no way this could be anything other than a Dick Grayson. When I watch a movie and I'm trying to decide, is this a Tim Drake or a Dick Grayson, I say, did I like this close to as good as Avengers? I mean, this is my measuring stick for Dick Grayson rating. So what else could it be? Dick Grayson.
Very good. Mr. Keenan.
This is a Dick Grayson all day, son. All day, son! I love this movie. It has changed everything about comic book movies. If your movie is not fun and enjoyable, you'd better have a damn good movie. This is the hallmark. This is the benchmark. It's a Dick Grayson all day.
All right, on to me. So before I started this bad boy up, I thought for sure, I was just like, well, I don't know if I can go Dick Grayson. I think this is going to be, just right underneath that. Not by a lot, but by a little bit. And as it went on, I was just like, oh, there's a little nit. But, man, I tell you what, by the end of this thing, you can't deny the smile on your face, man. It just does exactly what it's supposed to do. There are so many times in this that even the little tiny things that you're just like, oh, that's not so good. Man, does it have 15 different things that just go right against that to just go like, nah, bro. This is really good. And so, yeah, it's Dick Grayson all day long, man. I just, as much as I wanted to try to give a little jab to it, even the shortfallings aren't enough for me to, go away from giving this top honors, man. So Dick Grayson's all around. All right.
And there was never a doubt for me.
Yeah, well, not from you because you're a sycophant, and we know that. Okay, so next week we start off. The summer, I call this, even though it's March, it's summer starts earlier every single year, kids. And this year is no different. We're starting off big time here with the last entrance into the Wolverine franchise here. The last Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. The last, our last viewing of Professor X, man. Maybe not Professor X seriously, but, Patrick Stewart is Professor X. Patrick Stewart, sailing off into the sunset, and he says he's glad to because he believes Logan is just that darn good. We're going to find out next week if, indeed, Logan is so darn good, as I'm sure most of you are. So hit us back up here next week where we review Logan as well. Until that time, Bruce, where can we find more of your work on the internet, sir?
Just a reminder to everybody, Dragon in the Needles is out there. There's the audiobook, but there's also the ebook, the iBook, the audiobook, the paperback. You can find almost all of that at Amazon. iTunes has the iBook and the audiobook as well, but Amazon has it all. It's one stop. Just go to Amazon, search for Dragon in the Needles, and you can check out Chubby Wizard where we're talking about comic books and TV, and we get to run down the Gorilla City episode of Flash, and going over to Heroes and Villains. My next episode should be about Black Bolt whenever it comes out.
Very nice. Will Black Bolt have a lot to say about the show? I hate myself too, don't worry.
Stan Lee at his drunkest when he came up with the name Blackagar Boltagon.
I'll tell you what we're going to do. What do you think about that? You're drunk again, aren't you? You shut up. And, of course, Sean, what do you got, buddy?
I would say to you, Bruce, that's probably one of his best ideas that he came up with by himself.
Sing. The man's almost about on his deathbed. How dare you?
I know, and he's a treasure, and I'm trying to pick on the old man. You can reach me at Twitter at Hero Movie Sean.
And of course, my other podcast, Hero Movie Podcast. I'm used to plugging 8 different shows, so I'm all like, which one am I doing? Which one am I on right now that I've been doing for the past hour? The Film Find, thefilmfind.com. We got some new releases coming up and everything, so got all that on the docket there for you as well. Of course, Preacher Podcast also, and my new daily show, Nerd Talk Now, available on iTunes, Stitcher, and if you'd like to watch the live show, we do that Sunday through Thursday as well at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, hang out, man. We have a chat room open, so you can be part of the show. Executive producer Jim Beverly called in on the last show and everything, man. So we get we get a lot of fun stuff going on, and all that kind of good stuff. So check that out as well. Facebook.com/Nerd Talk Now. That is it, everybody. Join us next week when we talk about Logan. For Bruce, Leslie, Sean, Keenan, I'm Adam Portrais. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Evie.